My name is Lisa Miller, and I live in Denver, Colorado. For as long as I can remember, I've felt like an outsider in my own home. My dad, John, remarried when I was 10, and since then, everything in my life seemed to revolve around my stepmom, Karen, and her daughter, Hazel. Karen came into our lives with her perfect smile and her perfect daughter, and it didn't take long for my dad to start treating them like royalty. Hazel was the golden child. Everything she did was praised, every mistake forgiven. Meanwhile, I was expected to pick up after her, do her chores, and somehow be grateful just to exist in their world. Birthdays came and went with elaborate parties for Hazel, while mine barely got a cake. My dad said it was because I was more mature and didn't need all the fuss. I didn't buy it. Deep down, I knew he just didn't care as much. Karen never missed a chance to point out my flaws, calling me lazy, ungrateful, or messy. Hazel, on the other hand, could wreck the entire house, and Karen would laugh it off, saying, "Oh, she's just being creative." To them, Hazel was the princess, and I was the hired help. It wasn't just favoritism, it was isolation. The house didn't feel like my home. Every choice I made was questioned. Every space I claimed was invaded. And yet, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to be the bad daughter, the jealous stepsister, or whatever label they were ready to slap on me. But all of that changed one day, the day everything finally boiled over, and I stopped caring about being the good girl. That day started like any other, ordinary, unremarkable. I just finished a long shift at the coffee shop where I worked part-time. All I wanted was to come home, collapse on my bed, and maybe lose myself in a good book. I wasn't asking for much, just a little peace in the one small corner of the house that I could call mine. When I opened the door to my room, I froze. My walls, were no longer the soft lavender I had chosen years ago. They were now a garish shade of pink, Hazel's favorite color. Everything was rearranged as if my room had been swallowed and spit out by someone else's vision. It didn't take long for me to notice the worst of it. My desk was empty, completely cleared off. The stack of papers I had carefully organized. My college applications, my part-time work schedule, even a personal journal I'd kept for years, was gone. I stormed down the hall and found Karen in the kitchen, humming like nothing had happened. She barely glanced up from her cup of tea when I demanded, "What happened to my room? Where are my things?" Karen tilted her head, her smile as patronizing as ever. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I decided to give your room a makeover. It was such a mess, Lisa, papers everywhere, like a little dustbin. I threw out what wasn't important and tidied it up. It's better this way, don't you think?" My throat tightened. "You threw out my stuff, without asking me." "It's not a big deal," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Honestly, you should be thanking me. I'm trying to help you grow up." That room looked like a disaster zone. I couldn't stop the words that came next. "You had no right," I shouted. "Those are my things. You can't just decide what's important and what isn't." Karen set her tea down and stood, towering over me with that practiced air of superiority. "Lisa, you've been nothing but ungrateful since the day I came into this house. You've always hated me and Hazel too. Maybe it's time you take a good look at yourself and see why that is." Something inside me snapped. Years of frustration, neglect, and humiliation poured out all at once. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, I slapped her. The sound echoed through the kitchen, cutting through the silence like a blade. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her cheek as if I'd shattered her entire world. "What's going on here?" My dad's voice boomed from behind me. He'd come home just in time to witness the aftermath. "She hit me, John," Karen wailed, her voice trembling as if she were the victim of some grand injustice. "I was only trying to help her, and she hit me." My dad's eyes narrowed, locking onto me like I was a stranger who had trespassed into his perfect little family. "Lisa, how could you? She's done nothing but try to help you, and this is how you repay her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She threw out my stuff, Dad. She painted over my room without asking. How is that helping me?" "You're selfish," he snapped, his face red with anger. "You've always been selfish. You hate Hazel because you're jealous of her. And now this? Hitting Karen? You've gone too far this time." Karen sniffled dramatically, clutching his arm. "I can't stay in a house where I'm disrespected like this. Maybe it's better if I leave. Hazel and I don't deserve to be treated this way." John put his arm around her, comforting her while glaring at me. You see what you've done, Liza? You're tearing this family apart. Tearing the family apart. That's what he thought of me. Not the years of favoritism, not the blatant disregard for me as a person. No, the problem was me standing up for myself. In that moment, I realized something important. I didn't belong in this house, and I never had. Whatever they call the family, I wasn't part of it. And for the first time, I didn't care. 3 years passed after that day, and I hadn't spoken to my dad, Karen, or Hazel since. Cutting ties with them wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I moved out a few months after the incident and built a life for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, free from the constant weight of their judgments. Then one afternoon, as I was finishing up a shift at the local library where I worked, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen in years. Dad. For a moment, I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, my voice colder than I expected. What do you want? His voice was frantic, a tone I had never heard from him before. Liza, please. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need your help. Please just listen. I didn't respond immediately, and he took my silence as permission to continue. Karen and Hazel. They've left me, he said, his voice breaking. They kicked me out of the house. I made a mistake. A stupid mistake. I lost some money in a bad investment, and now Karen says I'm useless. Hazel, she sided with her. They've taken everything, Liza. Everything. I have nowhere else to go. I almost laughed at the irony. This was the man who once told me I was selfish, who had accused me of tearing the family apart. Now he was the one cast out by his precious wife and little princess. Liza, he said again, his tone desperate. I know I was a terrible father. I know I hurt you, but I've changed. I see now how wrong I was. I miss you, and I need you. You're the only one I can turn to. Please just give me a chance to make things right. I felt a storm of emotions rising inside me, anger, sadness, even a small pang of pity. But pity wasn't enough to erase years of neglect and pain. You need me now? I said, my voice steady but firm. You didn't need me when I was begging for your love, for just a little bit of fairness. But now, when your perfect family has turned on you, suddenly I'm worth something. Liza, I'm sorry, he pleaded. I was wrong. I see that now. Please just let me explain. No, Dad, I interrupted. You don't get to come back into my life and act like everything's fine. You made your choice a long time ago. You chose Karen and Hazel over me, again and again. And when I finally stood up for myself, you called me selfish. You called me jealous. Do you even realize how much that hurt? He didn't respond right away, and I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice trembling. I know I failed you, but I'm asking for your forgiveness, for your help. Please, Liza, I'm begging you. For a moment, I considered it. Part of me wanted to believe he could change, that this was his way of making amends. But then I thought about the years of hurt, the nights I cried myself to sleep, the way he always looked at me like I was a problem to be fixed. No, Dad, I said, my voice firm. I can't do this anymore. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. Go find Karen. Go find Hazel. They're your family, remember? I was just the selfish one, the jealous one. Isn't that what you said? Liza, please. No, I said, cutting him off. Don't call me again. I've moved on, and I'm not going back. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking slightly as I put the phone down. A strange mix of emotions flitted through me, sadness, anger, but also relief. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground without wavering. That phone call could have been a chance for reconciliation, but I realized I didn't owe him anything. Not my forgiveness, not my time, and certainly not my help. Walking home that evening, I felt lighter, as if a weight I carried for years had finally been lifted. In the weeks that followed that phone call, I found myself reflecting on everything I'd been through. For so long, I had believed that my family's love, or lack of it, defined me. That somehow, their approval or rejection was the measure of my worth. But now, with that final chapter behind me, I could see things clearly for the first time. I wasn't the broken girl they always tried to make me believe I was. I wasn't the messy, ungrateful, or selfish person they painted me as. I was someone who had survived years of neglect and favoritism, who had fought to find her voice and her place in a world that constantly pushed her aside. Cutting ties with them wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was an act of self-preservation. And now, for the first time, I felt free. My life after leaving them had been far from easy, but it was mine. I carved out a path for myself, no matter how rocky it had been. I moved into a small apartment downtown, just big enough for me and the cat I adopted from a local shelter. I named her Hope because that's what she brought me. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. Back then, Karen always mocked my messy little hobby, and my dad never bothered to defend me. But now, my art had become a source of joy and healing. I turned one corner of my apartment into a studio, splattered with colors and canvases that told stories of freedom, strength, and renewal. The people in my life now weren't perfect, but they were kind. I had friends who checked in on me, who celebrated my victories, no matter how small. They didn't see me as a burden or an afterthought. They saw me for who I was. One afternoon, as I sat in my studio, the sunlight streaming through the window, I realized just how far I had come. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at my dad, not at Karen, not even at Hazel. Anger had been the fuel that kept me going for years, but now I didn't need it. Letting go of them wasn't just about cutting ties. It was about letting go of the hurt, the resentment, and the weight of their expectations. I thought about my dad's voice on the phone that day, filled with desperation and regret. A part of me hoped he would find his way, that he would learn from his mistakes. But that wasn't my burden to carry. I wasn't responsible for his choices, and I wasn't obligated to save him from the consequences of his actions. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself, not for what I'd accomplished, but for who I had become. I was no longer the girl who begged for scraps of affection from people who didn't see her worth. I was a woman who had chosen herself, who had walked away from toxicity and built a life filled with love and purpose. That night, I went out with my friends to celebrate. We laughed, we toasted, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. I wasn't defined by my past anymore.